I'd be curious from a macro, larger perspective, in the wake of now, obviously, with the war in Ukraine and the implications that has had for Russian investors, most notably Abramovich and Chelsea. There are also increasing amount of questions around the separation of the state and any sporting institution, whether that be a club or that being governing bodies. Obviously, you have the Qatar ownership of PSG, United Arab Emirates for Manchester City. What is the status of these governing bodies? When we're having these discussions, which I feel are more pertinent than ever before, are there foundations, and dare I say questionable foundations at time? Are they being eroded? Are they being weakened? Or are they being strengthened as the people in these positions with a lot of different hats on are trying to secure their positions, so to speak? And going around trying to make you fill in the blanks, but if you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's these relations that governing bodies have with countries that we might find unsavory. And at the heart of it is, can sport and should sport have a higher moral standard, a higher moral regard than actually governments need to take? So if you look at it with, say, FIFA and Saudi Arabia, does Gianni Infantino need to have gone to see Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, so often in the last couple of years? Does he have to have appeared in a Saudi PR video extolling the virtues of the state? Probably not. Does Boris Johnson need to go to Saudi Arabia and have good dealings with them? Well, more likely so, because there's security relations, there's wider interests at play in terms of having Saudi Arabia on their side as an ally in terms of geopolitical and security matters, whereas FIFA can, quite frankly, if it chose to want to have a very distant relationship with Saudi Arabia. They're not desperate for them to host tournaments. They're not desperate for them to provide funding, and they can have their pick of countries where they go to. Yet, there has been that close relationship, and we've seen it in Formula One over the years, particularly in the Bernie Ecclestone era as well, associating with countries quite purely and nakedly for the fact if they're offering the most cash, and actually they're the easiest ones to deal with because they're not having to sort of grapple with democratic decisions over, where they might choose to go to within a country, issues around staging a race in that regard. And, sport, at least in terms of FIFA's sake, has actually implemented supposed higher human rights standards. They're not always applied to all tournaments. And I suppose at the heart of it, we see players put in a difficult situation, particularly around the Qatar World Cup, over just what they say. And it's a decision that players had no say in. The FIFA Executive Committee at the time in 2010, the FIFA Congress now, which takes those World Cup decisions, has no involvement from players. There's no FIFA say in that process, even though the tournaments would be nothing without the participants, and they do need the players to be on board.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you mentioned the players there, because I think a few weeks ago with the last international break, there were reports coming out the England camp that the team were having a meeting to discuss their stance over Qatar. And I can remember reading it and thinking, well, unless they're going to boycott the tournament, there's really no stance they can take. If they're going to the tournament to participate, any kind of stance that they would take at the tournament, if it was a statement or, I don't know, T-shirts or whatever, it would kind of come across as a kind of token gesture or virtue signaling. And I'm not, having a go at the players there, because like you said, I think they're in an incredibly difficult situation. I don't think it would be fair at all to expect them to boycott a World Cup, which is the epitome of their careers. But I feel like because of the kind of social awareness that we've seen in players in the recent years, and if you just look at England, the English players, for example, with Marcus Rashford campaigning for free school meals, and the English, football taking a knee for Black Lives Matter, it's almost like we're maybe expecting a little bit too much from the players and putting the onus too much on them. And I'm just wondering what your take on that is.
Yeah, it is demanding almost in the sense of amnesty, calling for them to take a huge moral position over the location of the World Cup. When Liverpool went to Qatar in 2019, they handled it pretty deftly, I would say. They backed out of the hotel they're due to stay in because they had some concerns over the abuses that might have taken place in the building of it. They also, when they were there, avoided excessive praise in Qatar, almost like they could have been anywhere. So they kept a sort of distant relationship with them because they didn't choose to play in Qatar. Very different from Bayern Munich, choosing to have Qatar Airways as a sponsor, choosing to go to Qatar for winter training. And you've got Bayern Munich shop next to the PSG shop in the Doha airport that I saw when heading back from the World Cup draw. And the FA in England were trying to come up with a response. How would the players react? And for a time they said, well, we've got to qualify first. Now they have qualified. They're sort of dealing with it. I think they are put under a fair degree of pressure from Amnesty, and there might be inconsistencies from Amnesty at time. So they actually were pretty quiet over the Club World Cup in the UAE, with Chelsea winning it in Abu Dhabi in February. Yet there are labor abuses, there are laws that deny freedoms to workers, the kafala system that we've focused on in Qatar being dismantled. And I was asking Amnesty, and they were sort of overlooking, and they'd done no investigations really themselves. And that can sound like whataboutery, like we're trying to sort of shift the blame all around, away from Qatar. But it just shows actually how even a human rights group will decide who do they focus on, where do they put the pressure on. So they weren't demanding Chelsea speak out in the UAE in the way that they are demanding that the FA takes a position and really puts them under pressure. And it puts players in a predicament. If you're Kieran Trippier at Newcastle, if you're bound by an FA position on Qatar, then it makes you open to face questions about the Saudi ownership of Newcastle, how he feels playing for them, given what he's signed up to a position with the England national team. The same, say, with Kyle Walker at Manchester City with the Abu Dhabi ownership. So they end up sort of being placed into this moral position that they then have a challenge maybe of actually being consistent on too. We've obviously seen teams with their sort of human rights T-shirts in World Cup qualifying, some vague and not necessarily directly referencing Qatar, and drawing awareness to it. On the flip side, I would say it's quite, significant as well that particularly around the World Cup draw, we hear Qatar sort of saying, people need to educate themselves more. People need to understand more about our country, thinking people sort of leap into conclusions, unfairly tarnishing them. Yes, they have been doing sort of behind closed door meetings or Zoom calls with national federations. But I can tell you, when the world's media descended on Qatar for the World Cup draw, there was no widespread attempt to educate more or to sit down with the media to say, this is what we've done, this is how we've moved, these are the labour reforms that have been put in place. There's been no attempt to sort of do that with fans more broadly, to sort of try to sort of to inform of the position.